MVP.
Hits one in the air, left center field, back it goes! Harper, the swing of his life!
You never get ahead of yourself. As Harris down the field,
I know Rangers do every day. It's always been that way for me. Always been a get better mentality every day, grow every day, be a better leader every day, be a better quarterback every day. And when that wrench do, I don't plan on missing no payments. So.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 3 in the Keystone, episode 103. As you can see right now, if you're watching us live, it is just myself, Adam Seltzer. Al Ryan and Chris Guest will be along shortly. I believe Chris probably at the driving range getting prepared for 3 in the Keystone, the big golf match between us three as well as my father, Jeff Seltzer, on Wednesday. Me and Chris against Al and my dad over at McCall Golf on Wednesday. Let us know who you think's going to win that match because it's been a buzz in the chat for sure. I obviously got my money on myself and Chris. I'm going to carry Chris across the finish line, but the guy's been putting in the work, so I got to show him his respect in that matter. In addition, I'll give you guys a little feedback before these guys jump on. I mentioned last week it was the week of my annual golf trip. We went up to, me and 11 others, to Arcadia Bluffs in Michigan. And listen, if you are a golfer and you are not doing a golf trip annually with your buddies, you are missing out because it is the best week of the year. And I've told them as Al jumps on now, just talking about a little bit about my trip, Al, the best week of the year, man.
Oh, well, hello there, everybody. And Adam, I'm excited to hear how it went.
So listen, man, this is how you know that the guy's golf trip is the best trip in the world. Because I always say, I'm a planner. I do all the planning for the trip. I have the planning down to a T, but there's 2 things that you cannot control, and that is travel and weather.
Yeah.
And we got shit on with both, and it was still a fantastic time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Fantastic time. So I'll just keep this one story short. So we flew into this airport called, we connected in Chicago, and we're supposed to fly to Manistee Blacker Airport, which is in Arcadia, Michigan, way up north of Michigan. So we get there, Al, and this plane has 8 passenger seats in it. I couldn't even stand up without hitting my head on the roof of the plane. Not exaggerating.
You want a dinghy? No, that's a boat. What's the small plane?
I think they call them puddle jumpers, but this was beyond that. And before we even get on the plane, Al, we're checking in, and they're asking us our weight.
Oh, you don't like to hear that.
They're asking us our weight. And then before we get on, they say, we can't take all of your clubs.
Oh.
So we were like, we all had a discussion, and we were deciding who was going to leave their clubs. And they were just like, we already pulled 3 off. Like, the decision is not yours anymore. We were like, so I had stuff like my clubs got taken off. And I was like, well, do you think, like, I had my golf shoes were in there, a couple other things I stuffed there. I was like, can we go in and grab some stuff? They're like, no, it's TSA regulations. You can't do that. So I played the first round with rental clubs and sneakers.
Oh boy.
But listen, I had a blast, dude. It was my favorite golf course I've ever played in my life. It was beautiful, right on the lake. Really just
good for you for keeping the spirits up through all that, because that would have ruined my trip.
And then the last day, one of the guys in our group got a hole in one.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
want to shout him out? Who is there? Are they
Mike Colinelli. Shout out the 12th hole at Arcadia Bluff South, 156-yard par 3. Dropped it in there. He wasn't in my group. We had 3 groups. He was in the middle group, but we all managed to see it because of where we were.
What more could you ask for?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it right there. And how big's the trip now?
As far as guys?
Yeah.
12 guys this year.
Okay.
12 guys. So I'll give you one more funny story before we start the show. We played 18 holes Thursday when we flew in. We played 36 on Friday. We were supposed to play 36 Saturday, but we only got 18 in because of the rain. But the afternoon round on Friday, by the end, everybody's kind of a little bit delirious. Pace of play was a little bit slow. So we get to the 17th tee, and it's a par 3, and there's another group still on the tee. And this guy steps up and cold shanks one, maybe 40 yards right, completely dead. And then these guys walk back to the cart, and they're like apologetic. They're like, hey, guys, just, like 2 groups in front of us is really slow. We're doing our best to move along. And like, we didn't care because we were having a good time. And my buddy Pooch is just like, I guess he wasn't thinking. After it's like talking to the guy who shanked it. And he goes, no problem. You guys are doing great. In exactly that tone. I was like, what are you, his dad, dude? Like, he just shanked the ball 40 yards right. What kind of comment is that?
That's not what he wants to hear.
Nah, but dude, awesome time. Just it's the best. It really is.
So we have we have our trip this Thursday coming up. Our golf trip down to Queenstown Harbor, Maryland. But what the fans, the listeners really need to hear about here is, do we have any prop bets for Wednesday's first ever 3 off the tee stone golf outing, where it's going to be, am I correct? That's going to be Jeff Seltzer and me taking on you and Chris in a match play format.
Yeah, so I mentioned it a little bit before you jumped on that was going to be the title, and I asked the fans to let us know who they think is going to win. I don't know. What do you think the prop should be? You got anything in mind?
I think over unders for pars made by Guest and I combined. I'm gonna go with over under 2.5.
McCall's a short course, man.
Yeah, listen. Guest has been telling us that he's been going out to the range and it's been iffy. I just had a very, very questionable round last week at Westover in that 99-degree heat. I did not play well at all. The only thing I had going for me was I wasn't losing balls. I was keeping balls in play. But if I was losing balls, I would have shot upwards of 120, dude. It was bad.
I'm going to go over, and I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt. I think we can get to 3.
What I think will help us is having Jeff there as the course guru to be able to help us read some putts.
Jeff ain't going to be reading putts for you. He's not doing that.
He better, for me at least.
What about over under 140 yards, Guest first tee shot?
Well, that first hole is not a driver hole.
I'll hit driver. I'll bang that driver right out there.
Will he?
I mean, I don't know what's going on in his brain, to be honest with you.
I'm just asking. I've never played golf with him, so I don't know what to expect.
I mean, he's only played. I mean, you can probably count the number of full rounds on one hand or 2 hands, I would think. I think he's probably played under 10 rounds. He hasn't played in 4 or 5 years.
If he takes out the driver, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here, and I'll say over. I'll say he'll put a nice little, Guest has that smooth lefty, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't really try to overpower it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he plays right-handed.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to figure out strokes. I'm thinking maybe you get 18, won a hole, and Chris gets 27. Maybe I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But we'll keep you guys live. Maybe even post something live on Instagram, a little feed for the followers to see what's going on exactly on the golf course on Wednesday at, what did I say, 10:40?
Yeah, 10:40. Guest birthday. Happy birthday, Chris.
Happy early birthday, Chris. Got to wonder. I think he's at the range right now, which is why he's late tonight.
That's probably it.
But let's get into tonight's episode, Al. The Fightin' Phils. We'll dive right into the red hot Phils. They go 4-2 again this week. They sandwich a couple of losses between 4 wins against the Padres and the Diamondbacks. They travel to Detroit this week. Obviously looking like they're going to win tonight's game. I believe it's 8-1 now in the 8th inning. Before coming home for a 4-game set with the Marlins, fireworks night. If you're interested, I'll be down there. I think Friday celebrating former guest of the podcast, Liam Devone's 30th birthday.
Oh, Liam's 30. I thought he was older than that, actually.
Yeah, 30 years old for Liam this week. But I want to dive into a couple different players tonight, Al, rather than talk about the way the team's performing. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start the conversation with a guy that I think we've passed over a little bit this year in some of our conversation, because we've talked Zach Wheeler, the Cy Young. We've talked a ton about JT Realmuto, how much he means to the team. We've talked a lot about the outfield and what needs to go on there. But Bryce Harper, 297 batting average, 397 on base, 558 slugging, That's a 955 OPS for those of you math majors at home. 18 homers, 51 RBIs. That was going into tonight. He has homered again tonight. 5 more RBIs as well. He's also playing an unbelievable first base defensively. He's second currently in the MVP odds on FanDuel behind Shohei Ohtani, who's putting up another insane season. But if Bryce Harper wins his MVP this year, and he's going to be a candidate, it will be his third overall and his second with the Phillies. I'm going to wait for Chris to get on because I have a trivia question for you. But I want to talk about his MVP chances at this point and where you think they stand.
I think they're very good. I mean, you just said it. I had it written down here. He's plus 200 at some books, plus 220-ish at others. He's, right now, you can't really say he deserves it over Ohtani. I don't think. Ohtani kind of has, if you look at the stats just head to head, Ohtani's ahead almost in everything. But I don't hate the bet if you're going to put some money on Bryce, because MVP, we know this to be true in all professional sports. MVP is a media award. ESPN and the media pundits decide who win that award. And while Ohtani is a shiny new toy now in the NL, Bryce is a guy that has personality. That I've said this before about the Phillies team of the 2010s, how it was hard to get behind them because they didn't have many guys that spoke the language. Ohtani doesn't speak English. Like, that's hard to get behind that guy as far as just a likability standpoint from people who are not Dodgers fans. Whereas Bryce, he's electric. He's charismatic. This June, his numbers in June alone, he's batting .370. He has an OPS of over 1. It's 1.116, 5 home runs. I mean, he's just tearing the cover off the ball right now, and he's doing everything in a time when the Phillies do kind of need it from him with all of these injury woes that have befallen us, with JT being out and Trey being out and now coming back. And it's just, he's putting the team on his shoulders. He's the emotional leader. He's the leader on the field. I don't hate the bet. If you were going to ask me if I wanted to put the bet down on him to win MVP, I don't hate it at all. And that's not just because I'm a Phillies fan. It's because Shohei's he's a 15-day or a 30-day stint on the IL away from almost handing that over to Bryce.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation before, and I think you've been one of the guys who said, like, the Zach Wheeler contract may even be better than the Bryce Harper contract. But what we can say is Bryce Harper was brought here to save Phillies baseball, and he has lived up to that expectation. He is the centerpiece. He is the energy. He is the straw that stirs the drink for this team, and he is the meal ticket. As good as Zach is, he's not out there every single day like Bryce being the face of this franchise. And not only the numbers that he has put up, but the big moments he's had with this team. He has completely lived up to every expectation that has come of him when he signed that contract, which at the time, it was 13 years. I don't remember exactly how much money. Chris, welcome to the show, buddy. And he's just, it seems like a bargain now in year 6. He's done everything that we've expected him to do outside of bringing a World Series here. But he's been unbelievable in everything he's done for the franchise.
When you see him step up to the plate in a situation where you need him to come through, it's weird the feeling that I get. Like, it's like an elation. Like, it's like an excited feeling. I'm never like, shit, like he might screw this up. Like, it's always like, yo, how is he going to do it for us this time? Like, I'm gonna be getting ahead of myself here. I mean, top 3 Philly of all time. He's not right now. When all is said and done.
Yeah, that's fine if you want to go when all is said and done.
That's a tough hill to climb, man. I mean, even with that,
it is. But who wants to be the guy that says he can't climb that hill? Not me.
I agree.
I think he's in top 5 right now.
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah.
Already?
I do.
We had a World Series.
Yeah, who are you going to put above him?
Well, you go Schmidt.
Schmidt for sure.
Right.
You go Carlton.
Okay.
You go. I mean, if you want to, go back and historically, you can go with like the Bunnings of the world and those kind of guys. We didn't see them, obviously, but
right. That's
a lot of the OGs would say he could be in there. Even the guys from the 08 team, the Howards and the Rollins and the Utleys. I mean, I don't know if those guys got a championship and have been to 2 World Series with this organization. Harper's been to 1 and hasn't brought it home yet.
We've had this.
I think he will be. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he won't be or can't be. I'm just saying I think it's still early to say that he's already that high.
I just think, and again, I'm getting myself. If he wins the MVP this year, he has multiple MVPs in 6 seasons, and you can say he doesn't have the World Series, but those guys won't have that, with the exception of Schmidt.
Well, and he'll definitely go down. I mean, he already has gone down as the best free agent signing we've ever had. That is, I think that's already been bona fide.
Better than Danny Tartable?
Huh?
Better than Danny Tartable?
Well, I was saying Mike Jackson. You know what I mean? I don't know, but no, but I think he's already got that on lock. But I mean, all time, I want to put him there. I mean, he's one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player in baseball right now. But I don't know if I could. I might be able to be sold, Al. If you had a strong argument for it, I might be able to be sold on it. But my gut right now would say no.
Let me change it this way. Let's take resume out of it. Just as far as greatest Phillies players, just talent.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's.
Well, then you had Halladay too to that.
No, but he was such a short stint with Philly.
But that's not what. But he said just based on talent.
Sure.
Halladay's talent was the best. You could argue Halladay's been the best pitcher talent-wise the Phillies ever had.
I could also argue that Harper's better than all 3 of those 2008 Philly guys.
And I think we had this argument before and we said we put him above them on that platform. The what's going to hurt Harper is when you always compare numbers, even though you shouldn't when you're comparing eras. And he plays in an era where there's just not that much offense. And so you're going to be comparing his home run numbers to Ryan Howard's home run numbers, and it's apples to oranges.
Sure. To an extent, I mean, Howard was a bull, man. I mean, I think in any era he would have been what he was.
I don't know. I don't know that you can say that because it's like comparing the NFL, the NBA. It's all skewed when you compare eras.
Well, I mean, Howard wasn't. There wasn't a bunch of guys hitting 60, 70 home runs when Howard played. I mean, if we were talking about a guy in the late 90s, early 2000s, yeah. But, I mean, Howard, when he had that year when he had, 58, I think was his career high. What was it, 06 or 07 when he had that?
Well, yeah.
I think, that was, if I remember correctly, that was clearly the league leader, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, my bigger thing would not be the power necessarily, but the pitching.
Even the RBIs, too. I mean.
Yeah, but our RBIs are a testament of who's on in front of you for the most part. You have to have guys on base to get RBIs. The pitching now, I don't know if would feed to Howard with the amount of guys throwing 95, the amount of guys throwing these sliders, the lefties throwing hard. I think the pitching is a lot better now than it was in 2008.
I want to say also real quick while it's on my mind, and it's a little bit off task or off topic here, but that's how I roll. You know that. I want to just shout out the baseball for the game the other day with the Giants Cardinals, the Negro League game. They did a great job with that. Playing in that stadium with that history there, and then ironically, the week that Willie Mays passed away, a guy who at one point in time played in the Negro Leagues, played in that stadium. I thought that was really cool.
Speaking of, if we're going to change the topics here and go back in time with some of that stuff, I want to ask you guys a trivia question I mentioned I had before you jumped on, Chris. And this will kind of take us back into, I don't think I have any Negro League players on here, but it'll go back in time a little bit here. If Bryce wins MVP this year, that will be his 3rd career MVP, obviously 2nd with the Phillies. 11 other players have 3 MVPs. Can you guys name those guys?
11 dudes?
11 dudes, but they're big names. I mean, you got 3 MVPs is a big deal.
Bonds
is one.
I
just named Willie Mays.
Willie Mays is not on the list.
Willie Mays won 2, yeah. Did Griffey win 3?
No.
Lou Gehrig?
No. Maybe it's going to be harder than I thought.
Babe Ruth? Well, baseball, there's so many.
For 3,000 years.
Yeah.
So there's 3 guys in our era.
Albert Bell?
Well, Albert Pujols.
Albert Pujols,
not Albert Bell. Drop that beat.
There is a Phillies player that we mentioned already on the list.
Schmidt.
Mike Schmidt. And there's one other player in the current era. Some might, I don't want to call him the major league equivalent of Joel Embiid, but
Trout.
Mike Trout is
I
correct.
was just thinking him. Okay.
And I'll give you the other names before, so we're not spinning. Jimmy Fox, Joe DiMaggio, Stan Musial, Yogi Berra, Roy Campanella, Mickey Mantle. Those are the other names. That's an elite Alex Rodriguez.
That's an elite list. I mean, it's all
That's
Hall
an
of Famers.
elite list if he wins his third MVP.
I mean, there's probably 11 of those dudes you said 11 guys, right? I would probably bet at least 8 of those guys are like arguably top 10 all-time players, period.
Sure. I mean, again, you can throw the Mays and the Aarons in there
Right.
who aren't on that list, but the Ted Williams. But I mean, they're the cream of the crop in regards to baseball history.
And like Al said, baseball is, unlike any other sport, is so chock full of history. I mean, it's almost like history that happens to have a sport involved with it. Like it's so deep in not just its own history, but American history. Like it truly is the pastime. Now, is it still? I don't think so. But historically, it always has been until the last probably 10 or so years, when the NFL is at this point clearly, I think, king in this country. But
I'll tell you what, watching Jackson play tournament ball, I'm refinding my love for baseball, dude. Watching a baseball game is awesome. It's so much fun.
Especially
Eating the
especially the young kids too.
Yeah, dude, it's fun.
It is. All right, there's a couple other players I want to talk about briefly. Nick Castellanos, a little resurgence in June, 269 average, 840 OPS, 4 homers, 7 doubles. 1 to 10, what is your trust level in Nick Castellanos moving forward as a contributor on this baseball team? Start with you, Al.
2. I mean, what he does this to, he's done this to us twice now, where he gets hot. This is just the Reese Hoskins role, is what he's filling in. He's having this, hot casty summer, and then all of a sudden he's going to be swinging, whiffing by a good 8 inches. That ball's low and away and in the dirt. No, I have no trust that he can keep this up. I'm happy he's doing it. I'm going to root for him while he's doing it, and it's coming at a time where we need him to do it because the outfield is in shambles. So I'm happy he's doing it, but I have no trust that he's going to continue to.
Nah, I kind of chuckled when Al said that because that's what I have too. I have this a 2. You can't trust this guy. I mean, even last year in the playoffs, he had a string where he was red hot, and then when it mattered, he stunk. So like it's literally day to day. Like you could think that you got it, and then all of a sudden you show up the next day and he's swinging up balls that are above his nose or across the plate that are 2 plates across his box. Like you just don't know. And I think his eye honestly changes every day. His batters. I really do. I think that it's just even that hit the game winner he had not that long ago. The ball was a terrible. Like he just chopped at it and ended up hitting it. It wasn't a great pitch to hit. But to his credit, he did put the bat to the ball and made something happen. But yeah, I'm not. If it's bases loaded, and you need him to get a hit or even a contact to get a sac fly to win a game, I'm still holding my breath.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually compare him to Robert Covington, and not the Covington we have now, but the Covington we had in his first stint here, because people used to rave about, Covington would shoot 36 or 37% from 3. And the way that Covington did it was he would go 2 weeks where he shot 52, 53%, and then he would go 2 weeks where he shot 15%. And in the playoffs, that doesn't play out, because if you remember that first year they got in the playoffs, we went into that Boston Celtics series and he couldn't throw it in the ocean. No. And it's the same thing that happened to Castellanos against the Diamondbacks. Is when you ride a player who just has hot streak, cold streak, hot streak, cold streak, you can't stay hot for a month. It's just not. No. It's just not possible.
I mean, and I would love to see. I haven't been able to do a deep dive into his career pre-Phillies, but to see if he's ever had a streak of time where I know he won a Silver Slugger before he got here, but if he had a string of time where he was that player of consistency that we need for somebody else, and he just hasn't found it here in the 3 years now that he's been here. I don't know if he's ever been that guy. I think he's always probably been a guy that's been really streaky. And when he ended up hitting 300, I think it was Cincinnati. or Detroit. I think he probably was just wrote a. I mean, again, I'd love to look it up. He probably wrote a hot month or two. I would not be surprised if that's what happened, and then he ended up, finishing with that. But yeah, I can't trust you.
Yeah, and I think to our point, we'll do a trade deadline primer as it gets older, further down the line. Al, you mentioned the outfield. If I can get Castellanos to drop to the 7 spot in the lineup, I think
That's where he should be.
5, and he's in the 5 hole. That's what makes it a little bit scary.
I love that the other day when Rob Thompson had him in the 2 hole a couple games, and Twitter was just way to put the guy that's like dead last in OPS in Major League Baseball among starters in the 2 hole spot. That's a great idea. But hey, it is what it is. He believes in his guys, and that's what he thought was the best play to do at that point in time. But I wouldn't be doing it.
Chris, when he hit 303 in 2021 with the Reds, it looks like he was consistent all season long. Like I'm looking through this now, his game log, and like there's no real dips. Like there's a couple streaks here and there, like maybe a week or two where he wasn't playing too well. But
yeah, but that happens. It's baseball.
Yeah, for the most part, it's like consistent every game, at least one hit.
And look, I was leading the charge when he was out there. I wanted him just like everybody else did. I remember that year as far as him, putting up numbers and things like that. Obviously, we don't watch him every day when he's with the Reds, but he was putting up numbers. He was, doing his thing. And, but I want him like everybody else. But now that he's here, we've talked before about how when you watch a guy on your team, you can see the flaws that others don't. It's like when you're in a relationship, you can see the positives that no one else can see, but you also can see the negatives. And that's how it is with this guy.
What is it about him that makes him so damn lovable, though?
I don't think he's lovable.
No, dude.
I really don't.
No, when he's playing well and like he has just this like I don't know how to like he's the cool, quiet guy, man. Like there's something about him when he's playing well that attracts me to him. I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
It's different from what Pat Burrell had. Like I can't really put my finger on what it is, but when he's playing well, man, I'm like I'm all go on him. But I know it's not going to last.
That's a good comp with Pat Burrell. I will say though, I do like with he'll check it up in a minute. Like the last couple of days, like he's be like, bro, like do your job. Like what are you doing out here? When he told the guy, you saw that clip when was about a week or so ago when he told that ump, I've been in the league 10 years, give me some effing respect. And then the other day when the ump didn't do an appeal for the check swing, he just called it a strike. And he was just like, dude, that's not how we do this. Like that's not how we do this. So I do respect that. But I mean, I'm sure he's a cool guy, whatever, but I'm in the minority, it seems like, but I don't think he's a lovable dude. I think he's a good, when he's hot, he's a good player. I think obviously the guys like him in the clubhouse, and that's all that matters. Who cares what we think about him? But I mean, he's not a guy where I'm like down the road when I remember this team, if they do something that I'm going to remember before Harper or Stott or Bohm or Nola or Wheeler. Like I'm not
right.
I mean, he's not going to be in that category for me.
Ask around though. Ask some friends and family how they feel about Nicky Bats, and then we'll report back next week. We'll see what we get.
Yeah, I mean, I want people to like him. He's a Philly. I want to like him more. I really do. But I got some scar tissue.
Yeah. Well, all that Philly love for you just goes to Joel Embiid. So you have nothing left to give.
Speaking of scar tissue, if I would give him any tissue I could, so he doesn't have to deal with the scar tissue. Joel.
Fair enough. All right, there's one other guy I wanted to just talk about before we close it out. There was some contract news this week as the Phillies signed Cristopher Sanchez to a 4-year, $22.5 million extension, buying out his arbitration years as well as at least 1 year of free agency, potentially 2. I'll give my thoughts on it to start. I think the deal's fine. Sanchez has been a guy who has thrown the ball well for the Phillies. He's been, I think he's second or third in the league in ERA at this point. But I do have some concerns about those numbers behind that. And I looked at his analytics today. His walk rate is up from where it was last year. His walk rate's at 7% compared to 4%. His strikeout rate has dropped from 24 to 20. The key to his success this year, guys, believe it or not, this stat, He has only allowed 1 home run the entire season.
I'll say he turns into a ground ball pitcher with that arsenal pitches he has.
He's pitched 84 innings this year. He's giving up 1 home run. Last year in 99 innings, he gave up 16 home runs. So the question is, his ground ball rate is up a little bit, but is that sustainable or is he going to fall back? Either way, even if he does start to give up a few homers, I think he's proven that he's a back-end starter in this league. Without question, he's proven he can go deep into games. He's got a legit pitch in that changeup. I think the deal's fair for all sides. I have no issues with it at all. Just curious to see how the rest of the year plays out with that number and, whether or not he can sustain. 1 home run is not sustainable, but whether or not he can continue to keep the ball in the ballpark, for the majority of the time and be a strength of his.
Well, I find myself saying this to you almost every episode, but the disrespect of saying he's a back-end starter when he's in top 10 in ERA. I don't know how you can say
you got to do it for more than half a year. I can't say that.
But I'm just saying though, like the guy, like let my man live, man. Let him cook. You know what I mean? Like, look, see, he can't even stay in there. He's so
Seltzer left, pissed him off.
Yeah, he can't even deal with it. And what is he got? An old man pack behind him? Like, what is that?
He's got a heating pad. Well, you know what? He just got back from playing 72 holes of golf. He's probably the back is all tight
bro,
up.
it's already on a couch. Like that ain't soft enough. You got to have that,
dude.
I got a herniated disc in my back. Why don't you if you're my teammate, let me use some support there, dude.
Well, I mean, I didn't know you had a herniated disc. I thought you were just being an old man on the couch with a back support.
It's a nice get, dude.
But either way, yeah, I think that Sanchez. I was going to ask you guys that actually. I guess I have your answer, Seltzer. But Al, where do you see this guy if he was on the Royals, or if he was on the Twins, or if he was on the Mets?
Yeah, dude.
Where is he in their rotation? I don't think he's a back end guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's a back end guy because of the situation he's in.
Correct.
I love this deal because he is a fantastic number 4 starter for the Phillies. If you have Wheeler, Suarez, and Nola, at the top of that rotation. Chris, if he's on the Royals or the Mets or whatever these, those shitty teams are in baseball these days, he's a number 2 guy at minimum.
I think he's
playing this season.
I think he's the top level guy for a lot of teams. There's a lot of bad, like we talked about this before. Baseball right now is a lot more bad teams than good teams, and a lot more teams than not would love to have Chris Sanchez in their rotation.
Okay, let me clarify my statement because you guys make good points. Back end starter on a good baseball team,
right?
We also have a potentially historic situation here, though. This is not a normal situation for a team to have this good of a rotation.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. But I think even if he's on Baltimore or Atlanta, if Atlanta's healthy, I still think he's a 3 or a 4 or a 5. He's not. I don't think he's a 1 or a 2.
Well,
I don't think he's that kind of guy.
That's what
I said. On a good baseball team. That's what we're talking about.
So what about on the Yankees? Where's he on the Yankees?
I mean, if Cole's healthy, Cole's number 1.
Right.
I have to look. I have to look who else they have on that rotation. Like that's Cortez. Luis Gil's been really good this year for them. They got another arm that Rodon's been good for them this year. He's back end, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. He's been really good.
I just feel like if you were pitching and you had an ERA around his, and someone said, "Yeah, he's a good back end guy," I think you'd take offense to that, and rightfully so.
If Cristopher Sanchez was starting your playoff game as your number 2 starter, I don't know if you're going anywhere, and that's okay. Like I'm not trying to bash the guy; he's been awesome. I just don't know if he's your number 2. You better have a damn good offense that's ready to step up because I'm not sure he's ready to handle that load at this point in time, and maybe he will be 3 or 4 years from now.
All right. Well, last question: do you think that Ranger is a legit ace on majority of other teams?
Yes. Yeah. What more do you need to see from him?
I'm asking.
You're trying to argue. You're trying to tell me that you think Ranger is a top 10 pitcher in baseball.
Right now,
no, just in general. Like I'm saying you're drafting the top 10. You're drafting pitchers for the foreseeable future. Is Ranger a guy who goes in the top 10 pitchers in a redraft? If you're redrafting your pitchers for all the teams in baseball,
I think if you did one right now, I think he'd have to.
Yeah, I think he's in that range. I think he's 10 to 12 probably.
And he's got good history postseason also.
Sure.
So he's not afraid of the moment. There's a lot of pitchers out there that have had good regular seasons, and then the postseason, they're not the same dude.
The one thing I will say about Ranger to that point, Chris, I do think he's cold-blooded. I don't think he doesn't fear the moment. Nothing ever seems too fast for him. The only thing, I mean, the biggest thing is, and again, we're talking the elite pitchers in baseball, is the eye test. He doesn't throw 95, 96, which a lot of teams fall in love with at this point. I don't think it's necessarily as important as people make it out to be. He doesn't have the
25. You get guys out, you get guys out.
Yeah, he has more success based on his location and his ability to dot the outside and inside corner as opposed to, I would say, his raw stuff, which is, again, we're talking the elite. You probably take like a Corbin Burns before him, wouldn't you?
Sure. I'll go with you there.
You probably take a Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're taking Zach. That's 3 off the top of my head. I'd have to look through some other names. I'm just trying to
But not everybody's going to be elite. Not everybody can be a Paul Skeens, right? Not everybody can do 102 miles an hour. I remember there used to be a saying a while back that it was like, if a pitcher has one great out pitch, he's a good major league pitcher. If he has 2, he's great. If he has 3, he's elite. And I remember, I think it was talking about like the difference between Doc Holliday and Cole Hamels or something along those lines.
And that's a great line, because I would subscribe to that thinking. I mean, look at Nola. Nola's outpitched that knuckle curve, right? And it's an elite pitch. Right. But I don't think he has an elite second pitch. And we would all probably say he's a really good starter, but he's not a great starter.
No, but what I was going to say too is, and we're going to talk about this later on in the show, is there was a guy who many years ago made a lot of batters look very foolish just dotting corners, and that was Greg Maddux. That guy did not have overpowering stuff.
No, but he had out pitches.
But he also could put the ball exactly where he wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the Ranger school of thinking. That's the Cristopher Sanchez school of thinking, because they're not going to overpower you.
Yeah. It's an interesting question, and I'm curious to see. Again, some of the guys we mentioned have done it in full seasons 2-3 years in a row. And while Ranger has done it in spurts, we haven't seen it for the full 162 game season. So I believe in him. I'm a Ranger truther, but I think we do need to see it over a full season before we can put him in that top 10 echelon category.
And let's not forget too that Ranger was a pretty high prospect for this organization. So it wasn't like this guy just came out of nowhere and all of a sudden was good. Like, he was a highly projected pitcher coming from Venezuela, I believe it was. So, this is what, I don't know if they thought it would be this good, but a lot of those guys in the front office of the organization that had to do with, signing him saw that this guy could really be a top of the line starter in this league. And he's also shown it as a great bullpen guy.
Yep.
Yes, he has. All right, final thing before we close it out. Chris, your thoughts on Taijuan Walker going on the DL?
Dude, you know what? Take your time. Okay. Injuries are serious things. Take your time, brother. Let that blister do its thing. Let it cook. All right. Take your time. Let Spencer do his thing. And we'll see you in 2027, whatever your team is when you're on that team. He's going to miss 2 seasons with a blister.
The worst blister in the history of baseball.
No, I don't have any interest in. I've seen all I need to see of Taijuan Walker.
All right, let's move on to topic 2 tonight. The Philadelphia Phillies aren't the only sports team in town making some noise or getting ready to make some noise, as the NBA offseason is right around the corner, specifically the draft, which is on. I didn't know that. Did you guys know that they broke it up into 2 days this year?
Yeah, this year, first year, yeah.
I didn't know. So the first round is Wednesday night, and then the second round is Thursday afternoon.
But that's going to be a bust for them, though.
I think so too. I don't think anybody's watching the second round.
Yeah, the second round, it normally goes quick, and then by like pick 40, people normally turn it off anyway.
Right. Now,
they're going to argue it's because it's 11:30, but I would argue it's because a lot of these guys, maybe 5% of these guys, end up being anything after that pick, historically.
it's also a tough year to do it, as we'll talk about how poor this draft is. But before we get into the draft, I want to at least talk about some free agency. Free agency will open up on June 30th, next Sunday. So we'll have a lot to talk about next week in regards to how it all plays out. But it's obviously the biggest offseason the Sixers have had in forever, as they really only have 2.5 players under contract. With Embiid, Maxey, we're going to assume signs the max, which is all but completed. And then Paul Reed's contract not guaranteed at this point in time. And I guess Ricky Council as well. So there's a couple roster spots there. But what I want to do is I have the big names in free agency, and I want you to tell me how interested you are in them as a potential fit on the Sixers. We'll do a 1 to 10 scale for you guys. And I'm going to throw some names at you. Let's start with the name that we've heard the most of in the last few days, and that's Paul George. So on a 1 to 10 scale, how interested are you in Paul George? Chris?
Pass.
First of all, I can't wait. This is like, so as a big movie buff guy, when there's a movie coming out that you anticipate for a long time and you finally go see it, and it can either be surprisingly amazing like The Dark Knight was, or it could be surprisingly awful like War of the Worlds. And I don't know I just feel like it's going to be one or the other with the Sixers this summer. It's going to be like, wow, they really hit a home run, or they can keep that. Paul George, they can keep that. I would say 1 to 10. I would say, I guess a 3. Maybe I could be sold to a 4, but I would say a 3.
Al, you seem to be lower than that.
No, this dude's a loser. We're going through the same thing we went through with James Harden. I don't want any parts of Paul George. We talked about it in the past, how like Clippers fans hate him. Like if his own team that he plays for hates him, then why would we want him?
That's the Gregory Soto. Soto.
He's a dog in a bad way. I don't want him anywhere near this team. We'd have to give him a max, obviously, so he'd be here forever. Dude, I'm 38 years old, guys.
You look great. You look great.
Yeah, thanks. I guess you're going to be 39 soon. So
39 in 2 days.
Look, we have hopefully many years left on this planet, but I don't have many years left as a Sixers fan if they sign Paul George to another 5 years or 6 years or whatever it is that they're going to have to give him.
Well, they can't do the 5 or the 6, but they could do 4, and that would be 3 years, 4 years too many.
I was just going to say, that's 4 years too many in an election year where we're going to have to deal with one of these two clowns as the president for the next 4 years.
Get political on here.
It's a waste of 4 years, no matter what.
Hey, if you want to talk politics, we can talk politics on here. We can cross that bridge.
To save us from that, I will say this. There's been rumors today that Paul George may opt in and demand a trade. At which point, I think that pretty much takes the Sixers out of the picture, I would think.
I don't know, because I keep seeing that there's potential for them to put Tobias in a sign and trade for him. And I don't understand why in the world. The only, I guess, the positive in that would be if he opts in, you trade for him. He's under contract with that 48.8 next year versus whatever you would overpay him anyway for a long-term deal. And then if it doesn't work, I guess you could leave him alone next summer and get that money recouped for another guy next summer. But I'm not willing to trade assets for that, dude.
But my point is, from Paul George's standpoint, the Sixers have enough money to give him a max contract. Why would he demand a 1 year? Why would he opt into 1 year and then say trade me to Philadelphia when he can just get the bag right now? Right?
That would be the funniest thing of all time.
I mean, you're right. And that's why it makes sense where, like, sometimes just the over-reporting in this time of year is frustrating. They said that the Sixers' interest has significantly waned, quote unquote, from him. It is in line with the new thought of him opting in to be traded instead of signing, which, like you just said, 100% I agree. That would tell me he wants to go to a team that is not here.
Right.
Whether it's the Knicks,
right.
Whether it's the Knicks, whether it's Houston, whether it's whoever it might be, it's not the Sixers. Because if it was, what are we talking about? And I thought it was funny that I read a report earlier that Harden is looking to see what happens with George before he makes his decision. These guys think that they're still like elite dudes. Now, I will say this, Al. I don't think it's fair to put Paul down like that after this season. This season, he actually was decent. He played 74 games. Yeah, I mean, he did what they wanted him to do. But normally, I would agree with you that that's what he's done previously and historically is not a testament to a winner or a champion caliber player or team.
He's still a loser. He's a loser at the end of the day. He's this era's Carmelo. And I hate to say that about Carmelo Anthony because he was a very talented basketball player, but at the end of the day, he was a loser. And that's Paul George.
Now it's a whole other conversation because I don't know if I agree with that. I think Carmelo was a winner on teams that it was like Iverson. Iverson was a winning player. He couldn't get with an organization that would give him winning pieces.
Melo is a way better player than Paul George.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But I get what you're trying to say, Al. But I don't know if that was the best example of it. But overall I agree with you. I don't think the guy brings the dog mentality and intensity that you need to win a championship.
To me, they're both empty buckets. I've never viewed either of those players as being like, oh man, that guy, that's a guy I want leading my team. Neither of those two.
Now, years ago, maybe in like 2017 or so, when he was
like the Pacers,
yeah. Then that was a different conversation. But at this point now, with him linking up with these dudes like Kawhi and James, and they care about even the other day, he literally said, "I'm not chasing championships.
Right.
I just want a good situation," which tells me I want a bag and somewhere where I can just vibe and feel good.
Yeah.
The Sixers do need, though, however, to keep an eye on that situation because they do have the Clippers 2029 first-round draft pick, which could significantly increase in value. Again, if George and Harden leave, who knows what direction that franchise ends up going. So that draft pick could definitely help or build some value this week.
I would imagine Kawhi would leave or opt out, too, at that point.
Kawhi signed an extension in the middle of last season.
But that was before he knew that George and Harden were going to leave.
We can't get out of that unless he demands a trade. But I don't know who's.
That's what I'm saying. If he wanted to be traded, I'm saying.
I don't know who wants to attach themselves to a 4-year max for Kawhi at this point.
Hey, Daryl Morey probably would do it.
All right, here's some other names 1 to 10, and we'll do it a little bit quicker. LeBron James.
You want to start out?
Honestly, I'm a pretty big LeBron hater. I would give this like a 5 only because of the aura of it being LeBron and being able to see him in a Sixer jersey and go to a game and watch him live.
Yeah, for all the reasons why we don't want Paul is why I would love to have LeBron. I would say 8. LeBron is a definition of a winner, and he's a damn near 40 years old, and he still had he arguably had one of the best seasons of his career last year. I mean, he shot the best from 3 that I think he's ever done.
I don't want all the drama surrounding him. And
that's the thing is that when you have LeBron, you bring a production with you,
right.
Literally and figuratively.
Right.
And that's the one thing that I understand the gripe that people have with having him in here, but I don't care who his entourage is. If he brings us the Larry O'Brien trophy, I'm cool. Like, I don't care.
Wouldn't you guys be embarrassed if you were Bronny?
Yes.
Right? Like, he's like, LeBron is really embarrassing his kid, man.
I don't know if I don't know if it's all just him, though. I mean,
let's see what happens with the draft. If Bronny is not LeBron's kid, he's not getting drafted.
Right.
I think that Rich Paul is, I mean, obviously LeBron is in Rich's ear too, but I think that for them to say he's not interested in going to a team, first of all, for him to have any demands is ridiculous. And to say he's not going to a team where he would get a 2-way contract, he is not interested in that. And he doesn't mind not getting drafted so he can have the freedom to pick where he wants to play. Like, that's not, that's really high self-esteem that you're going to sit there and say, I'm undersized. I'm not, an elite anything. And that's why I'm in that position. Yet I will be more than happy to pick and choose where I want to go to play. You can pick and choose where you're going to go. You might not be playing.
You're not going to play. You're going to be in the blue coat.
You're going to sit on that bench and see the sights.
Yeah.
But, I don't know about playing. I actually like Bronny. I think he's a decent player. Like I wouldn't draft him in the first round, but I'm telling you now, I got a hot take. Someone's going to do it.
I agree.
I think someone's going to take him in the first round.
Yeah.
All right, give me DeMar DeRozan.
4.
Yeah, 3.8.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a few years ago, it would probably be like a 7 or an 8. I don't want a 35-year-old coming in here with a mid-range game and declining defense at that price. I just don't.
It's so Philly to have all this damn money and there's no one to spend it on.
Well, that's because Daryl Morey and the organization, I've been saying it's an organizational issue. They miscalculated everything. Yeah, everybody.
It's Embiid's fault, like 99%. And then, like, I agree with you.
Like, Embiid even all of a sudden, Embiid talked to Paul. Now Paul don't even want to come here.
Last name on my list, OG Anunoby.
So I would say now, based on how the board is playing out here, I'm going to go with an 8.
Oh,
maybe even a 9.
That's right. I'd go with a 9. I'd go with a 9 after what he showed us in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I want to get him out of New York because they are an elite team with him in that lineup. I think they were like 22-3 when he played in the regular season with that team. So I need to get him out of there. And it also would be just kind of sweet to just take anybody from New York anyway. But for Saquon, now OG, whew, sign me up for that.
I'd go DeMar over OG.
Why?
Because I think this team, I'm still not sold on Joel Embiid being the best offensive player on a championship team. And DeMar DeRozan is a guy, to me, I know he's older, but he can go and get buckets at any time. We've seen him do it in crunch time of game, go and get shots. And OG Anunoby is an injury problem. He's hurt a lot. He got hurt in the playoffs. Let me pull up his games played here, but he's not a beacon of health. And while I think he's a very, very good player, I think the Sixers still need more offense, and I don't think he's that guy. Again, this year, Anunoby played 50 games. The year before that, 67. The year before that, 48. The year before that, 43.
So he fits right in. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
He fits right in.
Something different, Chris.
DeRozan, when is he showed to be within the last few years with that team that he's been on with Chicago, when has he showed that he can put a team on his back?
I think when they had a full team, a full deck with Lonzo before his knee fell off, and they went on, they were the 1 or 2 seed for the start of that season. I think it was that 2 years ago or 3 years ago at this point? I think it was DeMar's first year there. So it was, I thought he was an MVP of the league candidate. He's averaged last 3 years 28 points per game, 25 points per game, 24 points per game. He was third in clutch player of the year voting, whatever you want to make of that. 2 years ago, he was second in clutch player of the year this year. So he's shown the ability to make big buckets when they matter. Again, he's had some playoff issues, certainly, but how much of that is team versus,
I don't know. I think it's a clunky fit, honestly. I like DeRozan is at his best when he can, in a half court set, he gets the ball, does a post up, turnaround jump shot, or drives to the rim, that kind of stuff. That's not what he's going to be able to really do here as much as he probably has done in the past with other teams in other situations. Maxi's going to have the ball unless we sign another point guard, which is another conversation. But Joel's going to have a lot of the ball as well in the post. And I don't know how much he's going to be able to get off on his actual game with this team.
I agree with that, but I think if this team wants to succeed, I think we need to shape the ball where there's more touches to go around, and it's not just throw it to Joel and watch everybody collapse on him and him try and force something or among that way. And he played with Zach LaVine in Chicago, so it's not like he played with another ball dominant guard. And let's not forget one X factor in all of this. DeMar and Kyle Lowry were really tight in Toronto. And I know DeMar didn't play for Nick Nurse, but Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan very tight. I think DeMar ends up back in Chicago. I'm just saying I would take him over OG.
I mean, OG was probably tight with those guys too at that point in Toronto.
True. I asked you guys, I don't know if you put this together, just some under the radar guys. Doesn't necessarily have to be for the Sixers. Just some guys that you like that are a little bit, lesser names in free agency.
I don't like any of these guys. I don't like
Next
any
question.
of them. There's one guy that potentially maybe if you can get him on like a low budget deal for me because of the experience he would bring, and that's a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's it. That's the only guy.
Yeah, he's definitely on my list. He might be a guy they're going to overpay to get him.
You're going to have to, yeah.
But I would have value or I would have interest in that. I mentioned two of these guys in previous shows with you guys, Gary Trent and Sadiq Bey. I would have interest in those guys. Sadiq being a restricted free agent this year is going to be interesting because I think Atlanta has other bigger plans, and it sounds like they're nervous to pull the trigger on giving him more money. Plus, he just had the ACL tear last season. So I think they might be a little bit nervous. I think we can get him on the cheap though, and I don't think that these days ACL is way different than it was 10, 20 years ago. So even if he hurt it in the middle of the season or even towards the end of the season, by the time the season starts this year, he probably is going to be ready to go. If not, then shortly thereafter. So I'm not really concerned with that. And he's young still. Also, if you're looking for a shooter, Luke Kennard, another guy. Luke Kennard is not – I thought he was older than he is. He's only like 28.
Yeah.
I feel like he's been in the league 20 years. But he's only 28. He's got a club option. Memphis, same situation. Curious to see what they do with him with that option. And then how about for a Embiid backup? I've been on the Drummond train. But what about Valanciunas?
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, he's in the same camp as Drummond in regards to he's kind of slow and can't guard the pick and roll. But if you're only playing him 12 to 15 minutes a night, I mean, he's better than anything that we've had before.
And I want a guy that can put the ball in the net and when he's at the basket and also can board. That's what we need to focus on is boards. And he can definitely do that. So there's a couple guys that have interest in at the backup five that are going to be available, and he's one of them. But I don't know if he thinks and his agents think that he's still a starter somewhere. But if not, I would definitely kick tires on that.
All right. I have 4 guys on my list here. These guys are all bench players. I think I went a little bit further down the list than you guys did. I have first and foremost, I have Najee Marshall from New Orleans. I think he's a guy that they're going to let go. 6'7", can defend, got his 3-point ball up to 38% this year, does a little bit of everything. That I have him a soft spot in my heart for Precious Achiuwa. Always and forever, even though I know he can't put the ball in the basket.
That's like me with Chris Boucher.
Yeah. I don't see the flaws, even though they're staring me right in the face.
Yeah.
So I have a soft spot for Precious. Another guy I've learned to have a soft spot for is my boy Markelle. I know he had a bad year last year, but if he's your first guard off the bench, I think you're okay. I'm still a believer, and I think it's as a decent
believer in what?
What?
Believer in what exactly?
He has the floor game. He's got the body. He can really defend. He's long. He can still passing it in the paint. Problem is, he's just like his jump shot never came back. So
he
like
lost
that,
he absolutely lost it.
And this is the last place where he would find it.
I'm not saying here. I'm just talking about in general.
He lost it here.
Yeah, I'm not saying for the Sixers. These are just guys that I like in free.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
And last guy I have Xavier Tillman. I think he's a decent backup player for somebody out there who can probably get him on a minimum for cheap. So those are just some names that I think can be value for some teams in free agency.
Well, the two guys I had mentioned before that I said when we made our dream lineup for the Sixers that I would like Caleb Martin, but he's a player restriction on it, so he has to opt out. And then our hometown boy, Derrick Jones Jr. Especially this finals run, and I would like him on the Sixers.
Yeah, I agree, Al. But I think that Dallas has already said that's their top priority for this offseason is to make sure that they re-sign him.
Well, it needs to be because they look like idiots having let Jalen Brunson and Kristaps Porzingis go in back-to-back seasons, and then look what happened. So yeah, it needs to be their priority.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what his market is this summer because he's now earned he's earned a little bit of a bag himself, and he's definitely better than he's gotten better. His jump shot's gotten better, especially those corner threes. That's become a little bit of a staple shot for him, and he's always been a good defender, an elite athlete. And I mean, if he came back here, anytime anybody comes back home, we love it. And
Marcus Moore's got the key to the city,
and then they got the key to the hell out.
Yeah. The wild thing,
I still thought that he was a guy that could have helped us.
The wild thing about this offseason is you go into an offseason most of the time and you have specific needs. If we need a backup point guard or we need a wing who can the Sixers have a full roster of open spots.
That's what I'm saying. It's a blank canvas. They're going to either hit it out the park and surprise us all, or it's going to be like, what the heck just happened? Like we got hit by a steam engine. I
want to briefly touch on the draft, and we mentioned it earlier. By all indications, it's the worst draft class in a pretty long time, I would say.
That 2001 draft, I think it was pretty bad.
Yeah, is that the Kwame or is that the Kenyon Martin draft? The Kenyon
one
Martin
that had
is
the one that had Desmond Mason and all those guys.
That was 2000, I think.
The what do you call it draft was really bad too. The Anthony Bennett draft was a bad draft class.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I mean, led by him.
Yeah, I think that was. Let's pull that one up. I think that was 13.
Yeah, that was.
Here's your oh my goodness. You ready for this?
They were saying he was going to be the next Larry Johnson, and he just ended up being the next Larry David.
Now Giannis probably saves this draft class at 15, but here's your top 10. Anthony Bennett, obviously a big bust. Victor Oladipo, nice player. Otto Porter Jr., a bust. Cody Zeller at 4. Alex Len at 5. Nerlens Noel at 6. Ben McLemore at 7. Previously mentioned Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 8. Trey Burke at 9. And C.J. McCollum at 10. And let's just go to 11 for fun. Sixers at 11 take Michael Carter-Williams. Rookie of the year.
Rookie of the year, yeah. Well, who was in front of him?
Steal the draft.
Yep.
I just wanted to add real quick for giggles here. I just got a Shams alert that the Pistons and the Jazz are expected to be strongest suitors for Tobias Harris. Tell me something I don't already know.
Yeah.
All right. One of those teams is going to overpay. Now, the one interesting thing about that nugget is if he goes to the Jazz, does that make them at all likely or unlikely to trade Markkanen?
I don't think it makes a difference.
You think they would put them in the same squad, the same lineup?
I think Laurie, when he was in Cleveland, he was there with Mobley and Allen, and he played the 3 for a little bit there. I think he can play the 3. I think it's a clunky fit, but I think they would. The only way they're moving Markkanen is if they get a boatload, which they might.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? We might be into that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd be a really good fit. My only issue is, again, similar to what we were talking about. Laurie Markkanen never played in a playoff game ever.
That's the fear.
Yeah, what happens then? But anyway, in regards to the draft, from what I read on Twitter, the Sixers have done the least amount of pre-draft workouts out of anybody, which by all indications give you the thoughts that they would be trading the number 16 overall pick, which they have. They also have the 11th pick in the second round. Do you guys have any guys that you're interested in? I know, Chris, you're maybe more of a college basketball guy than myself, for sure. Anybody out there that really kind of jumps off or you might be interested in at 16 if they hold the pick?
Well, I said about backup bigs, Zach Edey. I would be interested in taking him at 16 if he's there.
Al, that's your boy. You're an Edey guy.
Christ almighty.
Absolutely. There's talk now, Al, that Portland might take him actually at 7.
What a mistake that would be. We just listed off some names like Alex Len and Len Boris, and this would be the next one in the long line.
Boris from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
This would be the next boss, dude.
Dude, I think that's a little bit of Penn State Kool-Aid that you got right there, dude, man. I don't think he's that bad.
slowest human being I've ever seen on a basketball court, man. He cannot play in the NBA. The NBA is too fast. Who does he defend? Like these stretch sevens now, they go out to the perimeter. He's going to be completely exposed out there.
He's only going to be a backup, dude. Like he's not.
But
I'm not
what
sitting
do
here
you
saying
take
he's going
a
to be our
backup
franchise
center
center.
at 7? You can't take a backup center at 7.
No, I'm talking about for us. I don't care what Portland does. I'm saying as far as for us at 16 in the draft like this, I had no problem taking that. Now, if it was a deep draft, then of course not. This draft, I'm all on crapshoots.
But that's a crapshoot with come on, man. Like you could do better than that. That's like saying you're betting on green on the roulette table.
Yeah, but if you've been on that, you get that bag if that lands on that green, bro. You get that double bag with that double zero. Rob Dillingham is it from all intents and purposes. It seems like he is the biggest boom or bust in this draft. He could be the next Maxey, or he could be just, like a Tony Delk or something like that. Now, Tony Delk had a long career, but he wasn't like a star player. But just thinking about Kentucky players. So you also, it's weird. It might be weird putting another small guard with Maxey in that. There might be a really small backcourt. But he's got good skills. Isaiah Collier is a good guy I'm interested in from USC. Tristan Da Silva has got good size from Colorado. McCain from Duke is a good shooter that we could use. But, and Nikola Topic, another guy. Apparently Seltzer, I saw this too. One of the guys that they brought in, interestingly enough, is a guy that's projected to be towards the bottom of the first round, even beyond their pick, from France. You seen this guy, Seltzer?
No.
Pakame Diade. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I might be butchering that, but he's from France, 6'8", 210. Right now, he's projected to go between like 25 and 30. So I'm interested to I'm curious as to why him when they're picking at 16, unless we're somehow going to trade down. Also, from second round, yeah. Also, Terrence Shannon, I think, is a really good prospect from Illinois. He's only going to be a lower prospect because he had a little bit of off the court issues. He had a domestic, maybe actually a rape charge, but then he got acquitted of it, so he's clear of it now. Yeah. But a lot of teams still might not be wanting to risk that. Right now, he's projected at 24, but his comp, if you go on his NBA draft page, is Donovan Mitchell / Mitch Richmond. So I would definitely take a flyer on a kid like that if you're going to be picking at 16. Again, in a draft like this where anybody can be anything we don't really know, why not?
I have two names that you didn't mention. And again, I've only watched a decent little bit about college basketball, but a couple of guys I actually did watch here. Al, this guy, you're going to love his nickname. How about that Carlton Bub Carrington?
Yeah, Bub.
So that's obviously a Pitt boy. So I watched plenty of Pitt last year. He reminds me of a little bit of a guy I mentioned earlier. He's like a poor man's DeRozan. He's like slithery in the lane, likes to get to his spots, that mid-range jump shot. He's not a great shooter at this point, but can handle the ball. He can distribute. He's got a sneaky little game. I think at 16, I think he's got some potential. And Deron Holmes from Dayton is another guy who I think has some size, can stretch the floor. Gives me a little bit of Bobby Portis vibes without I would say maybe probably a little less tough than Bobby, but can stretch the floor, can rebound a little bit. Average 20 and 9 for Dayton on 38% shooting from three. So two guys that I did watch that I did like.
I will say with Carrington, his again, I just like to see the comps just because it's fun to compare. But Sean Livingston and Spencer Dinwiddie,
two guys who again kind of slithery games.
Yeah. And they had long careers. I mean, so and who was the other guy you said?
Deron Holmes from Dayton.
So I haven't seen him play. I know he's a big guy, right?
Yeah, I watched him in tournament. He's 6'9". Again, I get Bobby Portis vibes. Pull up. What do you got for the comparison on your website you're looking at there?
6'10", 235. 5, Zeke Naji and Nick Claxton.
And
You know, I'm a Zeke Najee guys too as well.
Yes, you mentioned Rob Dillingham. I'm seeing his name pop up in a lot of mocks lately. I don't know if there's like smoke and fire there with why all of a sudden people think the Sixers are going to be taking him at 16 or they're high on him. Because I've seen a couple of mocks also have us trade up to grab him. I don't mind.
Dillingham?
Yeah, Dillingham. The kid can play.
Yeah.
You said it. I worry about potentially a backcourt with him and Maxey where they're kind of the same player. They're both small guards. They're both quick. They're both they play questionable defense. You didn't mention Ron Holland, the G League Ignite kid. Yeah. I believe he led the league in scoring. I could be wrong about that, but apparently he doesn't have a very good half court game, and he's not much of a shooter. The guy that
you're going to need both in the playoffs,
right? The guy I think I've sold myself on. I'm not sure if you mentioned him, Chris, was Tristan Da Silva out of Colorado.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So look, he's a big body. He's 6'8". He shot 40% on catch and shoot threes last season. He's a good passer. He's almost like a Jokic type of game, just in a smaller body and a smaller frame, because he's not very athletic, but he makes smart passes. He uses his body the right way to keep himself between him and the defender. Look, with the 16th pick, you said it's a crapshoot. I wouldn't mind taking a guy like that. He helped Colorado upset Florida in the first round of the tournament last year. He played alongside a couple of small, quick guards, Cody Williams being one of them. I don't know what the Sixers are going to do here or what they really can do here at 16. But like I said, I kind of sold myself on him or on Topic, Nikola Topic, because I think that would just be funny.
I think the one thing that, that I want to mention is you're mentioning those specific players with fits with Maxey. But to me, when you're picking 16th in a weak draft class, if you get a guy who's even a bench player and can contribute, that's all that matters. It doesn't necessarily have to be
Zach Edey. You get a guy that backs my man up. You're good.
Yeah. Listen, I don't hate the Edey pick as much. I think it would be funny. I'm not. I really have no feel on what Edey's going to be in the NBA. I see. Could he be Boban? Sure, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Could he be just a guy who's a backup center and is solid? Sure, he could do that as well. I have no feel.
He could develop into Yao Ming for all we know. We don't know.
No, we do know.
Then we can trade him beat out.
We do know.
Al, by the way, your boy Da Silva, I mentioned him not in detail, but I did mention him when we first started talking about this segment. But his comp is another one of your boys, Cody Martin.
See, there you go.
So not Caleb, but Cody, his twin brother. So I would not have a problem with having him on there. You had mentioned who was the other guy that you mentioned? Ron Holland. Yeah. So Ron Holland right now I'm looking is projected to go 9th to Memphis. In this board that I'm looking at, his comp is Tari Eason and a guest favorite, Will Barton.
I like Tari Eason.
Big Will Barton.
You are a Will Barton guy.
Dude, the one mock I saw had OKC taking Zach Edey. You imagine that front court?
They need size.
Oh my god. Yeah, they're going for it at that point with the size for sure. Yeah, right now I have them 12. It says like they're taking Carrington at 12, OKC. We'll see, man. It's gonna be, honestly, even pick number 1, we don't know yet who's gonna officially be there. Who's gonna be the pick? For instance, the guy that they right now, like the kid, Zachary, I don't know how to say Risacho.
I couldn't even say his name.
He is. His comps are Franz Wagner and Rashard Lewis, who Rashard Lewis would have had a really good career, but he wasn't the top overall number 1 pick in the draft. And then Alexander Sarr, the French center. His comp is Mitchell Robinson. Again, not a guy nearly that you'd be picking as a top 1 or 2 player in any draft. So I'm really – I know we got to cut this off, but Reed Shepard, this got the shooter from Kentucky. Again, Mark Price and Jimmer Fredette. Now, I hate to do this, but when was the last time that we seen a white American basketball player in the NBA become a bona fide star?
Kevin Love? maybe.
And that was what?
50, a long time ago.
I mean, so
Clay?
not that I don't. I'm rooting for the
Clay
kid.
not
I hope
white.
it works out.
Clay
But
is Clay half? Clay mixed
Clay's
race?
biracial.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about biracial. You know, in America, if you're 0.01% black, you're black. Like that's just how it is. But this guy, Reed Shepherd, is from London, Kentucky. So he's a good old boy.
There ain't no 0.01 in that.
But he can stroke it. He can stroke it.
I like the Tennessee kid more.
Next, Dalton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting draft, man, because there's no one that stands out above anybody else. And only thing that's for sure is, once again, for like the 18th straight draft, there's no Temple players in this draft.
All right, but stay tuned Wednesday night for the first round of the draft. And it's really the start of the offseason. We'll see what the Sixers have up their sleeve. More to come next week as free agency will have opened. But let's jump into segment 3, boys. This is something where, we received word after we broadcast last week that Willie Mays had passed. Obviously, a guy that we didn't really get to see at all. But when you look at the numbers, you can make a case that Willie Mays is the best baseball player of all time if you wanted to. And it got us thinking, who were the best guys that we've actually seen play? So we've each put together a list of 5. And I was kind of mad because I wanted to text you guys later in the day. And I thought it might be better if one of us did pitchers, one of us did infielders, one of us did outfielders. But too little, too late. So we all have our list of 5. And I guess what we can do is we'll start with Al, and you give us your number 5. And then I'm sure there's going to be some overlap, and we can kind of just talk through those guys, and we'll rotate from there.
All right. Well, maybe I didn't understand the assignment. I didn't quite rank them.
Okay.
So I don't really have a 5 through 1.
All right, then let's go to Chris to start then if he ranked them.
Well, I loosely ranked them. Loosely. I could be sold on mixing these guys around. I'm not ready to down the hill for any of these guys at any of these positions. But just off of my own eye test, from what I've seen with my own eyes, that's what you wanted, right?
Yes. Yeah.
From what we've seen.
Yep.
So you're not going to see like Mike Schmidt, because we were too young to see Mike Schmidt actually play. Guys like that. But my number 5, I'll start from 5 to 1. Number 5, I have Pedro Martinez.
Okay.
Pedro Martinez in his prime was electric. In fact, I'm going to try to find, there was an actual quote that I wanted to pull up for you guys. But I mean, obviously we saw him with the Phillies, and he was way past his prime at that point. But when he was with the Expos, when he was with the Red Sox, I mean, and especially with pitching in the era that he pitched in, which was in his prime, he was pitching in the steroid era, and still was just a lights out dude. So he was my number 5. What are your thoughts on that?
I got no problem with Pedro there. I don't have him in my top 5. If the list went to 10, he certainly would be on that list. Truly a dominant pitcher. The first memory of Pedro that I have is that all-star game in Boston when Ted Williams was out there, and then he went out and struck out the side in the first inning. If you look at some of his numbers through his prime years, which is the early 2000s, I'm going to pull them up now. Just some truly unbelievable stuff there. In 2000, you mentioned Chris, the steroid era. He had a 1.74 ERA in 217 innings with 284 strikeouts. He won 3 Cy Youngs in 4 seasons in 97, 99, and 2000. Just the true ace of that Boston staff, and ended up getting a couple World Series out of it. Really kind of did have some arm trouble and some injuries down the stretch of his career, especially once he moved to the Mets. But definitely one of the best pitchers of that era. I have no issue with you putting him there.
And I wanted to say the part that I was trying to find was from CBS Sports. It said from 1997 to 2003, Pedro's average season was 17-5 with a 2.20 ERA, a .94 WHIP, and 252 strikeouts against 45 walks. He had that 1.74 ERA, you said, in 2000, and Roger Clemens was second that year with a 3.70. His ERA that year was .73. And again, this is in the steroid era. .73 WHIP. Second was Mike Mussina at 1.19. His WAR was 11.7. Second among pitchers was Brad Radke at 6.2. So, I mean, the league average ERA at that time was 4.91. This dude rolled up with a 1.74. So, I mean, he was ridiculous. I mean, you can go on and see other stats that he's at as well. He ended up finishing with almost 2,400 strikeouts, 165 wins, 3 Cy Youngs. You know, he was elite, man.
Al, do you have Pedro on your list?
No, I don't have Pedro.
Oh, okay. All right. Why don't you give us a guy on your list there, Al?
All right. If I had to put a fifth here, it'd probably be the guy I mentioned earlier on the show, Greg Maddux. And Greg Maddux, for me, a couple of crazy Greg Maddux stats I dug up today. He threw a total of 8,006 called balls to 8,025 batters that he faced from 1995 to 2003, which is less than 1 ball thrown per batter. Think of it, and that's over 8,000 batters.
You said earlier, Al, he could put it where he wanted it.
Unbelievable. In 1997, he issued 14 unintentional walks to 893 batters faced. And then this is the craziest of all. He faced 20,421 batters during his career. Only 310 of those batters got Greg Maddux to a 3-0 count. And 177 of those were intentional walks. So only 133 were legitimate 3-0 counts to over 20,000 batters faced. That's fucking crazy.
And we had to see him in our division all those years. Yep. By the way, how stupid was it that we used to have to watch pitchers throw 4 blatant balls for an intentional walk?
Yeah.
Well, no, it was great because then you had guys like Galarraga that would swing away.
How stupid was it that we used to have to watch pitchers hit?
That too, yeah. Real quick, I just wanted to correct something real quick. My fingers slipped and I was on the wrong thing. Martinez actually had a 219 and 100 record and 3,154 strikeouts in 3,154 strikeouts in 2,827 in the third innings. So he struck out a significant amount of guys over the amount of innings that he pitched.
What's his career ERA? Actually, I have
his career ERA is, let's see, I got
2.93.
I was gonna say it's under 3, but yeah. So yeah, I mean 3,000 plus strikeouts. In 2,800 innings. I mean, that's longevity. That's dominance. That's a longevity of dominance. You know, but Maddux was dominant in a different way. It was just such point precision.
It was
that
finesse.
Maddux had.
Yeah, it was finesse. It was, dude, to win 4 Cy Youngs back to back. And then I know it's kind of a throwaway award at the pitcher position, but 18-time Gold Glove winner as well.
True.
Yeah.
All right. For my number 5, I'm also going to go the pitcher route. And I have somebody that's different than both of you guys. And I'm going to go Randy Johnson as my number 5.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is, obviously I can't argue with Maddux because of what I'm going to say. But from Pedro Martinez, to me, I always compare them because they're the same era. But we just got to see Randy Johnson more as Phillies fans because he was a National League guy. And when he was on the mound, it was just a spectacle every time he pitched. Because, you mentioned, Al, how many pitches a pitcher has. Randy Johnson had 2 pitches. It was gas and it was a slider. And if you were a left-handed hitter, you had no shot. There was no shot you were making contact. Just some stats. Career innings pitched, 4,135. In 1999, he threw 271 innings. The next best guy was 216. In his age 37 season, he struck out 372 batters in 2001. He won 4 straight
Diamondbacks, right? Was it Diamondbacks or Yankees?
Diamondbacks. He won 4 straight Cy Youngs from 99 through 02. He had 5 total. And he was just so intimidating every time he was on the mound. His playoff numbers aren't as good as you would like them to be, but he does have a World Series MVP from Arizona in 2001. And actually, guys, the number 2 pitcher I had, the guy I was debating putting in number 5, I think you guys are going to disagree with, but is a guy who's pitching currently. And if you look at Clayton Kershaw's numbers, Clayton Kershaw is going to go down as one of the best pitchers ever. His numbers, I was just comparing him side by side with Pedro Martinez, Chris, and they're hand in hand. The only issue is he has the playoff warts that I couldn't bump him. But if we're just talking regular season, his numbers stack right up with Pedro Martinez's.
Yeah, and again, he did it for a long time. I mean, he was in that 08 run that we had, which was 16 years ago.
Yeah, he was 20 years old in 2008 when he first came up.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting conversation to put him in this debate here. Not debate, but this segment.
I just don't think his playoff warts are too large to do. He has a career ERA of hold on, pull it back up here, of 2.48, which is almost a half run better than Pedro, and then his playoff ERA is 4.49.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mean, I'll say that Pedro was nasty. Maddox was precise, but Randy was scary. That dude. I mean, I can't imagine, like, he had that long, nasty, like, swamp hair. Yeah. He was 6'10", so he's probably like 7 foot plus on the mound. And I remember they said because of his length, when he threw the ball, which he already had velocity over 100, it was actually like 106 because of how close his release was to the mound. I mean, to the plate. So
we always have that moment with him and Kruk in the All-Star game in '93 when he threw it over his head.
Yeah, well, I just saw a clip of him and my boy Kenny Lofton, where he threw a pitch that was up and in on Lofton, and the bench is cleared, and Lofton's yelling at him, and Randy Johnson yells back at me. He yells, "It wasn't intentional. It was a slider. It wasn't intentional. If it was intentional, it would have been a fastball." Very next pitch, fastball up and in. Both benches cleared again.
See, that's what we miss in sports now. Yeah. Like if that happened now, and he probably didn't get anything. He probably got ejected, and that was it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you get like a suspension, you get the whole thing. But sometimes that stuff with that, like that was, I miss that stuff, man.
Yeah.
Still, he's on my list.
For time's sake, what do you have him at? Do you have him as
on my list? I'll put him at 3.
Okay. All right. So for time's sake, let's move a little bit quicker. Chris, give us your number 4 guy.
Oh, so my number 4 guy, I have Tony Gwynn.
Ooh.
And Tony Gwynn, if you get a chance, we kind of talk about this off air a little bit.
Junior or senior?
Senior. He has some of the most ridiculous, like crazy stats. I can't even go into all of them because of our time. But obviously, I mean, he bat 394 in the 94 season, which, as we know, was all cut short through the strike. At one point in the second half, though, he was batting 423. So he, let's see, it says rather famously, Gwynn struck out 3 times in the game only once. And it was in 1986. He faced 18 Hall of Fame pitchers for a total of 541 plate appearances, which is essentially a full season worth of plate appearances, exclusively to Hall of Famers, and he bat 331 against them. So, I mean, 21.7 strikeouts per season was his average.
Whew.
Last season, let me see, this article was from last year. So in 2023, 129 players struck out 22 times by the end of April. He averaged a season under 22 strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of his numbers. His lowest career batting average for a full season is 309. He's a 338 career hitter. Believe it or not, he had stole 56 bases in 1987.
He had a little bit of wheels back in the day. Yeah. He also, so it says since 1982 when Gwynn debuted, a hitter has finished a season with a batting average over 350 only 46 times. 7 of those were him.
Yes, I have him at 4, and I probably would have him higher, but it's more because I don't remember watching him at my age when he was great and really appreciating him. You know what I mean? Like, but now when you see these numbers, you're like, holy shit. I had 3 real quick. He hit with 2 strikes, he hit over 300. There's a viral video right now of John Smoltz talking to somebody, and combined Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, and Pedro Martinez. Tony Gwynn struck out only 3 times against them combined in his career.
I'll see that and raise you one more, Al. He faced Greg Maddux 107 times, which was more than any other pitcher, and he bat 415 off your board.
That's insane.
He bat 415 off Greg Maddux.
I don't have Gwynn on my list because of what Al said. I just don't remember enough.
It was almost just like we talked before about Hank Aaron. Like Hank Aaron was just a consistently great player, but he wasn't a flashy dude. And that's how Tony was. Tony was not a flashy player, but obviously these stats show he was arguably the best hitter. You could say him and Pete Rose or Ty Cobb as the best hitters in the history of baseball.
Yeah.
So Al, you have Gwynn on your list as well.
There's other stuff we could look at too that we're not going to even get into because of time. But I can go on and on.
He was my 4.
Okay. All right. Let me give you my number 4. And that's a guy that I think, you mentioned Tony Gwynn. I think, I can't say the best pure right-handed hitter of our generation, but I have Miguel Cabrera at number 4.
I thought about Miguel Cabrera.
From 2005 to 2016, his lowest batting average was 292, and he hit at least 313 in every other season. He won the Triple Crown in 2012. He hit 330 with 44 homers and 139 RBIs, and his 2013 season was actually better. He won MVP in 12 and 13. To me, every time the guy came to bat, he was scary. When he first came up with the Marlins, Chris, I remember we were at the game at the Vet. I told you this dude's
I remember it was yesterday.
And he hits a homer off Roger Clemens in that World Series. To me, just an unbelievable hitter. Obviously played in Detroit, so we didn't get to see a ton of them. But Miguel Cabrera, to me, is just a guy who absolutely mashed.
Yeah, no, he's – and again, longevity. Another guy with longevity. He played how many years? At least, 20 plus?
21 years, almost 3,200 hits, 306 career average, 511 homers. So, again, how many guys have 3,000 hits and 500 career homers? That list is not very long, and hit 300 for their career.
Do you have 2 Triple Crowns?
No, he almost got a second one. Okay. I got to look up. Yeah, in 2013, he didn't get home runs or RBIs, but he had 44 and 137. I just have to look up who was better than him that year. But he did win he does have 1, 2, 3, 4 batting titles.
Yeah, he was fun to watch.
Yeah, and the Marlins got rid of him at age 24. So shout out to the Marlins.
Yeah.
They can't afford nobody. You know that.
Yeah, I know.
They,
right. Al, hit us with one of your other guys here.
I got 2 left. Number 2 was hard.
Wait, who'd you have so far? Randy Johnson? Oh, Johnson, Maddox, Quinn. Okay.
Yeah. Number 2, I put Albert Pujols number 2 or Albert Bell. You guys tell me which one it is. He was, because when I think of baseball when we were in high school, and college, he had his first 10 years in baseball. He hit 331. He had 408 home runs in the first 10 years of his career. That batting stance is so iconic. The way he would hold the bat and kind of lean down with that front foot. Just seemed like a guy that anytime he was up there, he was going to get a hit. He was going to hit the ball. He was going to hit the ball hard. We thought he ruined Brad Lidge's career. Luckily for the Phillies, he didn't. And then I looked at because once I got out of college, I kind of stopped watching baseball as much. Over the next 10 years, then from 2011 to 2020. Real quick, sorry, I had it here. It's not letting me do it now. Sorry, I had his numbers. What I was going to say is he still hit a shitload of home runs. He really stopped hitting for average those 10 years. But if you look at his home run numbers from 2012 on, 30, 17, 28, 40, 31, 23. So he was still mashing. well into his 30s. I always thought that he was just one of the most spectacular baseball players I'd ever watched. And I always loved that story, how the scout that found him was like, what was he like? He was like a stock boy, or what was the story about that scout that found him? I don't remember, but he was down and out, and then he found Albert Pujols, like, and made his career pretty much.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I Pujols at 3 on my list. Again, another guy who, every time he steps to the plate was intimidating. Obviously, the Phillies and Cardinals were going at it a little bit in that era for greatness. The crazy thing for me with Pujols, obviously, he ends up with 703 homers, almost a 300 batting average. But the craziness to me, and I remember being crazy at the time, but now I'm looking at the things again. He was so good his first 10 years out. You mentioned the stats. And in 2011, the Cardinals won the World Series. And the next year, they let him go. Which, can you imagine that happening to a Philadelphia team, letting a staple like that walk after winning World Series? And it was the right move because he got that contract with the Angels. And, Al, you mentioned he was still productive to a point there. He had a couple good years, but he was not worth the contract that they gave him as his body just kind of started to break down. So, but for me, for the Cardinals to let him go after that World Series, that's wild.
Yeah, to start his career, there was nobody that I'd argue there was nobody that had a better beginning for several years of their career. He started off with 4 straight 40-plus homer seasons, 10 straight seasons of 100-plus RBIs, led the league in OPS and slugging 3 times, had a 400-plus OBP 9 of his first 10 seasons. He almost won the Triple Crown in 2010. He won the MVP 3 times and was second 4 times. So he almost won 7 MVPs.
Dude,
which, 1 is awesome, let alone 7. That's especially in today's unless you're the NBA and just giving Jokic an MVP award for waking up, it's pretty impressive to have that many MVPs in any professional league at this point in time. So, this was not 100 years ago. This was within the last, 5, 10, 15 years, this guy was doing this kind of stuff. So he was just, and he never really was like, oh, this guy might end up being something. Like it almost feels like he came in the league as an already elite player. It was a weird, I don't remember anybody really since him where they just came in the league. I guess maybe Trout. You came in the league, and Harper, and it was just like they already were a star. They already were just like, this is what he's going to do. This is how he's always going to be with this guy. And that was, and he backed it up.
To your point, Chris, I was just about to say this. His rookie year, he was 21 years old. He hit 329 with 37 homers and 130 RBIs as a 21-year-old.
Yeah, he almost won rookie of the year. He almost won MVP his rookie year.
Yeah, 4th in MVP in that year. We'll talk about who won MVP that year in a little bit, I'm sure. But yeah, Al, do you have Pujols on your list?
Yeah, that was my number 2.
He's my number 2 also.
I meant Chris. Okay, so you guys put him at 2. I have him at 3. I'll give you my number 2, and then we'll go to Chris for his other guy. I have a guy who I don't think is going to be on your list, and I'm going to tell you that it's disrespectful that you don't have him on your list, and that's Mr. Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, boy, we knew this was coming.
I don't know how you can not have him on your list at this point. At age 20, we mentioned Albert Pujols' numbers. At age 20, Alex Rodriguez hit 358 with 54 doubles, 36 homers, and 123 RBIs. He has 3 50-homer seasons. He has 3 MVPs. He has 2 Gold Gloves at shortstop. Career 295 hitter, 696 homers, 2,000 RBIs, 330 stolen bases. One of the greatest all-around players that we've ever seen take the field. And yes, there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of issues around him. But again, I don't know how you can say this guy was not one of the best players that you've ever seen play in our era, because his numbers are just insane. And to do it at a position like shortstop for the majority of his career is another thing. He changed the game for shortstop when we used to have guys like guest boy Ray Ordonez.
Oh, God.
Over there who couldn't Desi Relaford at shortstop.
Ozzie Smith.
And Ozzie Smith, who's a Hall of Famer, but was not known for his defense. A-Rod changed what a shortstop could look like in this league.
He wasn't known for his bat, Ozzie Smith, as far as his power, I should say.
Correct.
Yeah.
No,
You know, he's actually, but he was my number 3. He was
Don't
my
like
number 3.
move on. Don't like him.
What are you, Sidney Crosby? I don't like him. Just don't like him. No, he was my number 3. Pujols was 2.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you remember when he got that deal, first of all, he came from my team, that Mariners team that we talked about before. You know, was elite, and it's a sin that they didn't win a World Series. But when he got that deal to go to Texas, if you remember, that was the biggest thing that ever happened in sports. I mean, that contract was insane. What was it, 13 or no, 10 to 230, I think, or 240, something like that. And that was 20, almost 16, 17, 18 years ago?
It was 2001 when he signed with Texas.
So 21 years ago, and he had a $200+ million deal. That was unheard of.
Yep.
And imagine what that would have looked like now with inflation and everything else, what that value of that deal would be.
Absolutely.
So no, he was a great player. And again, like you said, with the shortstop position not being known for a power spot. And then not only that, he just goes to the Yankees and plays next to one of his peers that was also one of the best shortstops of all time. And he just goes to third base and does his thing there.
Yep. 2007 with the Yankees, 54 homers, 156 RBIs while hitting .314.
And he does it in the biggest market in the world.
Absolutely. I think we all have one guy left on our list, if I'm not mistaken, number 1. Right?
Yep.
I think we all can agree that it's Mr. Bonds.
Yep.
That we have.
It is not for me. No, it's not.
Who do you have?
I'm not putting Bonds on my list.
What?
Not. I can't. I can't. I don't.
If you have
I don't
A-Rod,
like.
if you have A-Rod on your list, you have to have Bonds.
You have A-Rod.
Smoke.
I just feel like Bonds. That asterisk that means a lot to me. Now I test wise, yeah, he was a great player, but I just can't get over that.
Who do you have at 1?
He has Griffey.
You got what do you mean? Who I got at 1? My name's Chris. Nice to meet you. Of course, I got Kenneth Griffey Jr. as my number 1. George Kenneth Griffey Jr. Part of Denora, Pennsylvania. All right. How many guys have been a 5-tool player? We talk about guys that have come into the league and just been already stars. And Griffey was one of those guys that was elite at all 5 tools. He was an amazing defender. He had a great bat. He could steal bases. He could hit for average. He had an elite arm. There wasn't really a flaw in his game. In fact, he was looked at one point as the next Willie Mays. And unfortunately, due to injuries, he fell short of that. But I mean, let's not act like Ken Griffey Jr. was not an elite Major League Baseball player, gentlemen. I know that that's my guy, but I mean, if you look up his stats, it's hard to really argue that at least Griffey would be in. I would bet for people our age, if you ask them the same question, I would bet at least 85% of them had him in their top 5. In fact, now that we're done this, it's disrespectful that you both don't have him in your top 5.
He's number 6 for me because of the injuries.
Yeah, if we're talking eye test, I'm fine with it, but his resume just doesn't add up to these other guys because his body broke down. Especially, I mean, when he left Seattle, essentially is when it all started to go.
I mean, even with that said, with his injuries, I mean, the guy still is a Hall of Fame player, MVP, 13-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove, 7-time Silver Slugger. Like, I mean, he had 630 home runs, 1,836 RBIs. He had a lifetime average of 284, which it should have been even higher if he actually didn't just continue to play when he was already toasted, from like 2007 until 2010. Because at one point for a long time, he was a career 300 hitter. But 184 steals.
Look, I love Ken Griffey Jr., dude. He's one of my favorite players of all time as well, Chris. But when I think of him, I think of like Penny Hardaway and Grant Hill. I just think of a guy that had it all, and his body just betrayed him.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a little bit of a longer prime than those guys. He obviously had some great years in Seattle before he ended up in Cincinnati. But again, I think the inconsistencies, Chris, of having A-Rod on your list and not having Bonds on your list, is something that we'll talk about.
But there's a reason why I don't have Bonds on my list. The same reason he's not in the Hall of Fame. I can't, like, for me, with Griffey being in that same era and being clean and having numbers for the most part, except for like his average and his home runs, really comparable across the board to Bonds, it's really not fair to put Bonds above that based on what we know about Bonds. That's where I'm coming from. Also, when Griffey played, Griffey was an event. Griffey was beyond. He transcended baseball. Like, you're
disrespecting Bonds now, dude.
No, I'm not. How am I disrespecting Bonds? He disrespected himself.
But you're saying those things as though Barry Bonds was not an event, as though he didn't transcend baseball. And to put Griffey's numbers against Bonds' numbers that's not fair either. Bonds' numbers were Herculean status. Dude.
Can we?
Yeah, but you also are dealing with a guy who was notorious for doing steroids.
That's fine, but a lot of people in that era were.
Right. We don't know.
Listen, you could say a lot of them. None of them were near Bonds' numbers. Can we get into some of these? As I looked at some of these.
Yeah, no, he was a great. I'm not sitting here saying the guy stunk. I'm just saying that for me is, like, you talk about Griffey with his injuries. For me, Bonds' steroid situation for me takes over any argument.
Okay, that's
same with Roger Clemens. Same thing.
Fine. I think the argument for me and Al's sake is, if you're going to do that for Bonds, you should have not had A-Rod on the list.
Yes.
That would just be the.
All right, go ahead with your Bond stats. I'll tell you why I did A-Rod and not.
I mean, there's so many to pull out, but I just want to go to the peak seasons. And again, I know steroids is a factor here, but other guys were on them and they weren't putting up these numbers. 2001 to 2004, here are the number of walks that he had in the season: 177, 198, 148. In 2004, he walked 232 times.
He was 39 years old too.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about consistency and longevity? He has 762 homers, which is the most all time, and he only hit 50 plus home runs once in a season. A good OPS for a season now for a major league player is 800. His career OPS is 1,051. His on-base percentage was only under 400 once from 1990 to 2007. And in 2004, he got on base 61% of his plate appearances. His on-base percentage was 610. Additionally, he has 8 Gold Gloves. He led the league in hitting. He hit 370 in 2002. His numbers are just astronomical. His baseball reference page is bolded all over for his league leaders. It's just an insane stat line for him. And like I said, I know some of it's tainted, but all-time leader in homers, all-time leader in walks, all-time leader in intentional walks. He had 120 intentional walks in 2004. 120 intentional walks.
I remember a game, I think in 98, I think it was, when he played, I think, San Diego, when they walked him with the bases loaded.
I think it was Arizona. I think it was Showalter.
Yeah, it was the bases. They walked him.
Yeah.
98 Arizona. Seltzer, he has 688 intentional base on balls in his career. Second most all time is Albert Pujols with only 292. He was also walked 41 times in his career with the bases empty. He just came up to bat lead off and they just put him on first.
They're like, nah, son. Not going to fall for that trick.
He's the only member of the 500 club, 500 home runs, 500 stolen bases. He reached base in 2004 376 times, and he only had 373 at-bats.
That's insane. I mentioned OPS being, again, 800 is a good season. He was over 1,000 from 1992 through 2005.
Yeah.
And the year that streak broke in 2006, he was 999.
Well, I will say, from and you guys won't give this any credit, but from 89 to 99, Bonds was actually third in the majors in RBIs behind Al's boy Albert Bell and Ken Griffey Jr.
Listen,
1152.
Griffey. I'm not saying Griffey was a.
I mean,
a bad
Griffey
player.
had a lot of crazy stats himself. Now, like let's not get it twisted. Now, is he Barry Bonds with the stats? No, but again, I don't know what is real with Bonds and what was not. And Griffey was never proven to be in any of that situation with Balco, on the Mitchell report, none of that stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, and other people are concerned, he was a clean player. Barry Bonds does not have that, and that's why I can't put him in my 5, and that's why he's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't think it's crazy for me to say it. Like the Hall of Fame, for them to still not even put him in the Hall of Fame with those numbers. And the sad thing is, he would have been in the Hall of Fame without doing any of the steroids. He was already on the path to being a great player, but once he got on those, I don't know how those affected his impact on or his performance after that had happened. So I can't put him on there.
I remember reading the Balco book. I think it was Game of Shadows or whatever.
Yeah.
And the quote was that they took from him. Again, this is from, I think it was his trainers who were writing the book, is he remembers watching the 98 home run race with Sosa and McGuire and being like, both those guys are on the juice and those guys can't tie my shoes. Why shouldn't I just start doing this stuff and become the next guy? And that's where it all stemmed from. And listen, I think if Griffey's body doesn't break down, he's on all of our list. There's no question about it.
He's one of only 7 players ever to hit 40 home runs in 7 straight seasons. I'm sorry, 7 seasons, 5 straight from 96 to 2000. He one of 4 players to ever steal 20 bases and have 50 home runs in the same season. 300 home runs and 100 stolen bases throughout the 90s, which was one of only 4 guys. None of them being Bonds was. Let me see. No, Bonds was one. It was Bonds. Is this the same? Yeah, 300 plus home runs and 100 career stolen bases by a player in the 90s. It was Bonds, Canseco, another dope, Griffey, and Sammy Sosa. So again, what's in common there? 3 of those guys got caught for being on steroids.
Yeah,
for a long amount of time.
You're not taking on the question of longevity. You just didn't do it long enough. That's all. I'm not. Everybody knows Griffey was great.
And he still was 6th all time in home runs. He still had 630 home runs.
I understand.
None of us had the GOAT on the list, though. None of us had Shohei.
I was
gonna say I thought of him too, but I just obviously his body work is still not finished. But he is the one thing that he does that obviously none of these other guys have done is pitched elite as well as hitting.
Right.
You know what the problem with Shohei Ohtani is?
You can't watch him.
Exactly right. None of us have seen him. He's never been in the playoffs. He's been pitching on a team in the Angels who have just been irrelevant for so long. And, now will be our chance. We'll see him in a couple of weeks. He'll come into Citizens Bank Park for the first time.
Dude, this past week, I think he's had like 6 home runs and 13 RBIs this past week.
Yeah, no, we talked about it before you jumped on. Right now, he's the National League MVP. His numbers are better than Harper. Although Harper's in the race, but he's on pace to win. We talked about Harper winning a 3rd MVP. It will be Ohtani's 3rd MVP if he wins as well.
Yeah. Also, Griffey. So the players since 1989. No, because I'm fighting for my man here. I'm living, dying, and everything else on this hill.
We broke him.
I've got breaking news when you're ready.
Since 1989, when Griffey entered the league, only his former teammate, Alex Rodriguez, has more RBIs. A-Rod had 2,084 RBIs. Griffey had 1,836. Barry had 1,831, as did Manny Ramirez, who also was not named in this discussion.
Go ahead, Seltzer. I know what you're going to say.
The Florida Panthers have avoided history. They've won the Stanley Cup.
We're going to close out with the hockey.
It says that Bob stoned Connor McDavid in front of the net.
I don't know. I had it on the background, but was not paying attention.
I don't know if that was in the closing minutes or what, but
congrats to the Florida Panthers and all their diehard fans. I'm sure they've been waiting a long time for this, and they'll get to celebrate in the streets of where are they at?
Miami, right?
Are they outside of Miami, the stadium? I don't think it's in Miami.
Sunrise, Florida. It's in the middle of nowhere.
The Sunrise streets will be booming tonight. But on that note, we're going to drop that beat.